Apologetics can serve as a tool in evangelism. First, as we've said earlier and in this module, it's important to realize that apologetics, making a defense of the faith, is not synonymous with gospel proclamation. You might be well served to consider how the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 2 that he knew nothing but Christ and Him crucified. Yet in many other places and times, he most certainly did employ clearly apologetic methods in reaching people. Consider places like Mars Hill in Acts 17, contextualizing in order to reach lost people. Apologetics, though, definitely can and does serve non-believers in Utah. Apologetics serves non-believers in that it demands that we as the believer know what our LDS friend believes. This starts before the encounter. And while there is a Christian benefit for this, the fact that we have to study for and pray for our lost friend is a benefit for them even before the encounter has begun. Additionally, during a conversation about faith with our Mormon neighbor, we demand that we would listen to and learn from what that person actually believes so we can deal with those things in making a defense. And it is good for the person listening to hear that we care about and are hearing what they're saying. Apologetics serves the non-believer maybe the most obviously, in that it deals with the genuine obstacles a person might have with the Christian faith. Most Mormons have real issues with the Christian faith. This is why one of my favorite questions to ask Mormons is, what do you think is the biggest difference between Mormonism and Christianity? When the person answers the question, they'll almost certainly then be identifying for me a boulder in the path that they have onto Christianity. It helps me know what I need to deal with. A person might say something like, well, the Trinity makes no sense to me. I couldn't be a Christian. They might say something like, you believe revelation has ceased and we believe it's continued. They might say something like, priesthood and the authority with it has to continue and it's been lost by you regular Christians. You need people like Mormon prophets to continue to pass that down to the next generation. We want to deal with those very specific boulders, those particular objections. Any Christian can come up with things that they want to say about the Christian faith, and those are wonderful and often very helpful in the proclamation of the gospel. But apologetics deals with the actual objections that are on the heart and on the mind of the person hearing the gospel. Apologetics serves the non-believer in simply that it shows the value of reasoned arguments. We said earlier in this module that that's really what apologetics is. It's providing reasoned arguments in our statement of a defense of the Christian faith. The Apostle Paul tells us to test everything, and Mormons think of that very differently than we do. But we know that that means that we should take things and make sure that they're actually true before we just believe them. That we should test them against more than just our feelings and our minds or a couple of other people in our life, but we should test those against Scripture and to see if it comports with reality. Many Mormons even struggle with their own faith. They struggle with knowing what they believe and why they believe what they believe. When we show them reasoned arguments for what we believe, it challenges them that they should likewise have reasoned arguments for what they believe. They have not been taught by the LDS Church to seek out reasons in the same way that Christians are. I can remember in a very young age even, growing up in a Christian home, to be encouraged to ask hard questions and seek out answers to those hard questions that I may grow in my faith. Many Mormons will relate to you that they didn't have that kind of experience. But instead, they asked hard questions, were given an unsatisfactory answer, or even worse, told to not ask questions at all. We want for people to see it is important for there to be reasons to believe what you believe. Another way that apologetics serves the non-believer and that it shows the value of clarity. One of the biggest differences between Mormon apologetics and Christian apologetics is that you will likely find Mormon apologetics tends to make simple things sound complicated, where Christian apologetics makes complicated things sound simple. Our hope is to convey truth in a way that everybody can understand it, in a childlike manner. It's very common for Mormons to point to apologetic arguments for what they believe that so complicate and convolute the problem that at the end of the day they say only smart people can understand it. Only the high level of intellectualism can understand the answers to this. Therefore, we as the underlings must just trust blindly. As Christians, we want to bring down even complicated things to the most understandable level. We want truth to be clear. And apologetics serves the non-believer in giving them clear answers and showing them the value of clarity in knowing what they believe. There may be a few things that will be helpful to consider as we employ apologetics in evangelism. First, know what you believe. If you've been thinking about what's been said so far, you'll realize it's going to be important for us to know what we believe, to defend what we believe. Christians need to get in their Bibles, need to study their history so that we know how to convey what it is that Christianity actually teaches. Know what they believe. It goes a long way to our neighbor when we try to understand even just the basics of their beliefs so we can deal with them as appropriately as possible. Anticipate objections to those beliefs. This is when you look at what Mormons believe and what Christians believe, and you try to determine what might be the biggest differences, the things that might be those biggest obstacles. The best way to find this out is just to ask people, what do they think are the biggest obstacles? And the more you do that, the more you'll be able to anticipate those objections in further conversations with more people. Be honest about what you do know and don't know. As Christians, we are truth lovers. We're truth seekers. We're not afraid to look under every rock and in every book and consider every argument because we just love to revel in what is true. This means that when we find things that we don't know the answer to, we don't fake it. We just say, I don't know. There's something glorious and wonderful about those opportunities to demonstrate true humility. I don't know the answer to that question. I'd love to know it, but I don't know yet. What a wonderful thing for our Mormon counterpart to hear us demonstrate humility even as we employ apologetics. Lastly, love the person more than winning the argument. I've heard many people ask, Rich, how can you employ apologetics in evangelism without making the person a project or a target? The answer, I think, is simple. Love the person. If you love the argument more than the person, it's not going to work. If you're looking forward to spending time with that person, to share these new things that you'd like to help them with because you can't wait to trump their argument or win somehow, win the chess match, don't do it. Love the person. Care more about that person's soul than what they think about you. Wouldn't it be better for you to lose an argument with somebody and yet somehow they were to go on and to fall in love with Jesus and end up in heaven, than for you to win an argument just to embitter a heart? Care more about the person than your arguments. This is not just an intellectual exercise. Souls are at stake when we employ apologetics. Thinking rightly about these things will set you up to win as you encounter Mormons and other people all around Utah. In our next session, we're going to consider how to deal with even the irreligious people who are in Utah.